Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'll do some of the housekeeping first while others are getting on. And my name is Arnfinn Alstrefjord. I'm with the Consortium for Service Innovation, and I'm the global head of the KCS Academy, which is a subsidiary of the consortium. And this is our KCS in Action, which we usually host the last week of the month. Our next session, so you'll see the calendar here. Our next session will be, so today we will be having Lynda go through her experience in improving the time to resolution, and she has quite a few metrics, and we're going to have this very much of a dialogue, so please provide any questions you have. Next month we're going to have Athena Health, and that's going to be Adam Mullen from Athena Health, and he is going to focus on what they're doing, steps they're taking to improve self-service success. And then in July, we're going to have Lindsay, and she is going to be from Chick-fil-A, and she has her team. They're going to go over the KCS coaching program and their licensing model and best practices, lessons learned, etc. And then in August, we have Libby Healy from Tyler Technologies, and she's going to talk about manager training best practices. There's definitely a sweet spot on how much information you give, strategy versus the details, how to motivate the knowledge workers, etc. So she'll be going through that. We do also have program meetings, and we just recently had a program meeting. In fact, we had Lindsay from Chick-fil-A present at that, but for members, we do record those. And so we recorded the enhancing KCS roles, and we focused on the coach and the KDE. And you can see here in the member only wiki. And if you are a member, you don't have a login, please request that from us and we'll get you set up. But we had quite a bit of a conversation about coaching best practices, KDE best practices, measuring self-service success. You'll see the slides here as well as the recordings. So definitely recommend you taking a look at that if you have access. And so again, today, pleased to introduce Lynda King, and she is from ServiceNow. She's going to talk about how KCS reduces time to resolution. So Lynda, I'll stop sharing and you can take it away.
Great. Thanks, Arnfinn. And it's so great. I see several people that I actually recognize on the session today. And as Arnfinn said, what we want to make sure is that we're, can't multitask, let me get my presentation going here. If you've got questions as we go, the line is muted. But we want to make sure it's interactive and you're getting the questions answered. So as Arnfinn said, so I've been here at ServiceNow for 3 years, and I run the knowledge program for our global technical support. Prior to being here at ServiceNow, I ran a program at Salesforce, both in the HR team and the global tech support team. So I'm excited to share our story here at ServiceNow. So can you guys see my screen? My slides? Okay, perfect. So the other thing about my background, so I've spent 24 years in actually doing this type of work and have been working with the consortium now for almost 20 years. And so this is a journey that many of us have been on. And so we love to share, just what we've learned and, how others can benefit from our lessons. So I always have to put up a safe harbor slide just because I'm going to be talking about some things that we're releasing in future releases here at ServiceNow. And so the agenda, so we're going to talk briefly about just the overview and challenges, again, briefly about knowledge-centered service, because you guys actually know all about that. Talk about our adoption timeline, our coaching model, measuring progress, what's next for us, and then we'll have time for Q&A. So I call this slide the money slide because I want to grab your attention that says if you don't, have time to listen to the whole story, obviously this is being recorded and you can, spend some time. But in ServiceNow, one of our key elements for measurement is actually our median time relief. And what that means is how quickly do we take an issue from initial reporting to where we've given the customer at least a proposed solution. So what I'm showing on this screen is basically in the orange is where we were Q1 of 2019 and where we grew from Q1 to 2020. So in the orange, I'm showing how many cases we had in our system. So we increased cases by 12%. Now, what's really interesting, again, that's typical, for a growing organization. But if we look on the right-hand side in the green, what I'm showing is our median days to relief. And any of you math guys or gals know that moving a median is really tough because you're basically lopping off all the short tails and the long tails. So the fact that we were able to reduce our median time relief from 3.14 days to 2.06 days. And this is again within 1 year. And the main initiative that contributed to this, was our KCS program. So if you look at the numbers, our median time to relief overall reduced 52%, but we also track the median time to relief just for cases that had a KB attached, and that was actually a 62% reduction. And so this is the story as to why and what our outcomes were. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about, the background. So again, I'll zip through these slides real quickly, but some of you may not know, anything about ServiceNow. So we went from basically one product family called ITSM to over 9 products, and we're continuing to grow. So our support environment has become more and more complex. In a sense, we are a cloud platform, meaning that we support our customers' instances. So what you can see again, in the last 5 years, we have increased the number of specific customer instances year over year, 130%. And typically our annual case growth has been 18%. Now, that's different than the slide that I had initially, because we have been growing at 18% annually. And now this last year, we only grew at 12%. And again, those of you that have been in this KCS world for a while, that is the ultimate goal. If we can increase our customers, but keep our case growth flat, that's our goal. So the challenges, again, these hopefully are things that you'll nod, because these, we all experience this. So we were solving the same issue over and over again in multiple sites. We had poor integration, had a limited number of people creating content, and the knowledge wasn't centrally available. So just to get a sense of what our organization or where our silos were, just showing the different geographic locations, and our content was in SharePoint, it was in OneNote, it was on the local desktop, it was in our Slack channels, emails, and most importantly, it was actually in people's heads, right? So this is the ultimate challenge that we have. So I'm just going to talk the journey of people, process, and technology. So our goals were to obviously have better knowledge and speed up the learning curve. So one of the things that we did here at ServiceNow is we have added new support sites. So we added a new support site in Hyderabad. We added a new site in Dublin. We had a new support site in our Tokyo office. So we needed to make sure as we were hiring new people, we had a system that would allow them to have access to information so that they could get on the floor and start handling cases much more quickly. Obviously, faster case resolution, and then improved content curation. So I'm not going to talk in detail about the KCS process because, most of the folks on the call, you wouldn't be on this call if you didn't already know something about KCS. But I wanted to speak to how we started and kicked off the program. So when I came to ServiceNow again 3 years ago, we already had a knowledge base we already had what we call a knowledge champion program. So we had people that were interested in knowledge. The piece that was important for us, though, was making sure that everybody was bought into this new idea. So as the consortium, recommends, and I've done it actually in my previous KCS initiatives, is I made sure that we had a very formal kickoff meeting. And we actually brought in Jennifer Pinn from DBK Associates to help the team understand what this KCS thing was all about. And so we did 2 workshops, one in December and one in February. We actually brought in 20 people for each workshop from across the globe. And so this was a big investment. And I remember our chief technical officer, he's like, Lynda, we're doing what? What do you mean? For 3 days? Like, what are they going to do for 3 days? Like, I don't understand. And I just said, Alan, I said, you just have to trust me on this, that if we're serious about this initiative, we have to make this investment. And, at the time he said, okay, like, I'm not sure, but I'll support you. And I have to say that that's one of the key successes that we had, is the fact that that core group of 40 people, which was at the time, maybe 8% of our overall organization, had the full understanding of the KCS journey. And those people, are continuing to be very active in our program. But I guess I would just highly recommend that you make sure that you do like an event that kicks off the message that we're doing something different. And the tech support engineers that came to that event, they basically said, Lynda, we do these kind of events when we launch a new release. He said, but from a support perspective, like, we've never gotten the global team together before. And so immediately they knew this was something important and they had an important role to play. So again, this is our process. Again, this is the normal process where, the customer is going to search. Hopefully they're going to find something. If they don't find anything, they're going to log a ticket. We're going to create a knowledge article, and we're going to share knowledge. Again, that's the simple version, of what our mission is. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about our adoption timeline. So as I mentioned, we started officially, we kicked off our program in late 2017 with those workshops. But our first go live, and of course we did training, as our process. But our first initiative started in April, where we went live with just 6% of our tech support team. And so, and again, if you read the KCS practices guide, you'll see it talks about this wave rollout, meaning that you take a core group of people that already get it, that are passionate about it, they want to do it, they want to try something new. So you're looking for your early adopters. And that was what we did in wave 1. Then we doubled the population and launched a next wave in August of 2018. And in between each wave, we would review our process, update some of our process, definitely updated our training material so that then we could be, more effective with the next group. Then in January, we again tripled the number of people we trained. And July of last year, we trained the other half of the organization, basically. And so for 2020, I'm going to talk about some of the initiatives that we have going. But on this timeline, I always show that the future, meaning we're never going to stop. This is, this program never, is, okay, when are we done, Lynda? It's no, we're never done. We're always going to be focused on this.
The next thing that I want to talk about is our coaching program. So one of the key elements, as we've all learned, is about coaching. And I have to say that, I haven't ever been able to execute a coaching program to the degree that we've done it here at ServiceNow. So let me talk a little bit about how, we handle our coaching program. So basically, at the point that someone is trained, so in those waves, we trained all those folks. Once they're trained, we basically assign them a coach. And that coach has the responsibility to review all the articles that those new candidates are creating. And then they would communicate with any concerns they have to the manager. Let's say we've trained them and we're not seeing any change of behavior. Because one of the things we really focus on is that the coach's focus is on the skill of the tech support engineer, and the manager has the focus on the will. So then we, move into the pre-contributor role after about 30 days. And the times vary. Obviously, if we haven't seen them creating too many articles, then we basically will extend their candidate period. Once we move to pre-contributor, then the coach is only spot checking the articles for the next 30 days to make sure that they're, consistent with, the article creation process. The articles look good, they're attaching at the level that we want them to. And then the last phase is we move into a contributor role where the coach will be just spot checking, the articles occasionally. But at this point, the contributor can publish articles, out to the public without any people looking at it. Now, one thing that we know that comes up sometimes, people go, well, wait a second, are we sure we're okay with people just publishing, out to the public without any review? And we know in KCS, time to publish is super critical. So what I've done is someone on my team actually has a report that they run, and they do a quick check of articles that have been published to the public this week. And that way, we just make sure that we're proud of everything, that's going out in the public. So again, coach responsibilities, some of you, have this in your program, but basically to be promoting the benefits, assessing quality. We obviously use an AQI within our system that automatically sends feedback back to the author on things that the coach is recommending to be changed. We meet with the knowledge workers. We have weekly coach meetings all over the world. And then to continue to be that champion of what the best practices are. So now I want to talk briefly about, measuring progress.
And
Go ahead, Arthur, is there a question?
Oh yeah, a quick question. Is your licensing time-based on time-based or skill-based or a combination?
So what's interesting from a system perspective, everybody has the permission to publish to the external, whether they've been trained or not. So from a system perspective, we're not actually enforcing the rules because what we learned is that there was too much overhead in trying to, move people through, the approvals. And we just said, no, let's just set the default. Everybody can publish. We trust people aren't going to publish things that, we're not proud of. And so it's definitely skill-based as opposed to time-based.
Okay, thank you.
But it was kind of a dramatic moment. I have to say, when I started, we had a very strict approval process. We had a technical approval. Then we had a literary edit that my team was responsible for. And so our time to publish was, really bad. And there was this perception that, gosh, unless the knowledge team didn't get involved and pretty this up, we couldn't publish. So we had definitely some barriers in the way in which the program had been run until I came. So let's talk a little bit about how we looked at measurement. So on the far left-hand side, we measured basically global adoption. So how many tech support engineers were searching, how many were attaching, how many were creating, and then how many articles themselves were created. We didn't set goals on any of these things, but we wanted to see that when we train folks, that we were starting to see these adoption numbers go up. And I'll show the dashboards here in just a minute. In the center section, we talked about regional progress. So I wanted to make sure that the management team had a visibility to what their progress was from an attach rate perspective, how many articles they created, and what their percent candidate to contributor. So we wanted to make sure that the managers knew how quickly their team was progressing through the 30, 60, 90 day. And so we did set a goal on how many people moved through the system within that, 60 to 90 days. And then we made kind of a big deal about who actually successfully moved to contributor, but we also made a big deal about who were the stragglers, right? And we made, the managers fully aware that, they weren't playing, right? And we needed their help to make sure that everybody on the team, moved, through our process from candidate to contributor. And then on the right-hand side, we had our performance outcomes. And this is where the time to relief, became the critical metric that we used. And this metric wasn't just for the KCS program, but this was for the overall success of the organization. We measured, our case deflection and our reuse. So this is just a sample. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, there's just a question on that slide. You had a number of articles created, but then you had a number of KB articles created. If you could give us some insight into the difference.
Yeah, so in our system, and you'll see in a couple slides that we keep track of, we have an article called a support and troubleshooting article versus an article that is considered a known error article. And so those are really different articles within our system. And so we were tracking those numbers separately.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep. And so you can see on this chart that, the first column is the attach rate. Second column is articles created for our KB and support and troubleshooting. And then the third column is our known errors. And then you can see the last column is the percent contributors. And this chart, we purposely had it be this red, yellow, green. And because managers hate to be in red or yellow. And so when this report went out every month, the managers immediately looked at this report and said, okay, what can we do, Lynda? What's happening here? How can you help us? So this was actually really, really helpful. So
Great.
I'm going to walk through, again, a few slides on what's next, and then I want to get to some live dashboards.
Okay.
So a couple things. So we've just recently launched a mobile app. So again, as part of the KCS program, you need to kind of get your internal teams, using the knowledge, but then you need to put your tools in place to allow your customers to get full value. So we've added mobile, and we've also added virtual agents. So you'll see, for customers, they will be on our portal. The virtual agent will actually be linking to knowledge articles and be able to help them, self-serve without, having to interact with us. So this is one of the focuses for Q2. Is our attached quality scorecard. And I wanted to just, bring a little bit of attention to this, and then we'll see this live. But basically what we have given our teams is the ability to understand their attached quality, because we know, again, we've rolled this out to 600 people. And for us to maintain, are we actually having the teams exhibit the behavior we trained them on? So you can see here in the middle, we give them a summary of, how many passed, meaning from a process perspective, they did it the way we wanted it to, and then how many actually were exceptions. So you can see the first exception is they attached after closure, right? And we want them to actually be attaching in the problem-solving process. So we're showing that 4.36% actually attached after the case was closed. 3% are attaching over a day after solution proposed. So we actually want them to attach even early in the process. Our delayed attachment, delay to creation. So 3.4% are actually creating over 10 days after the case is closed. We have 3.2% or 3.3% that is incorrect attachment. So in this model, we have a list of articles that they shouldn't be attaching that are more like troubleshooting guides, that type of thing. And so we can have the teams be able to look at this data, not only, by this overall, but we can look at it by individual SME team. We can look at it by manager. We can look at it by individual tech support engineer. And all they have to do is click on this orange and they'll see the detail of exactly which cases basically have failed or are exceptions and what is the reason.
Great.
So this is our coach back for quality. Go ahead.
And we do have quite a few questions queued up. One is on
Okay.
that, the attach. Who does, is the coach do the attach after close, the attach, the delay, the incorrect attachment? Is that?
Yeah. So basically what this model does is it highlights where we want them to coach back. So exactly, the coach is going to look at this data, see who's actually the offender and what is the issue, that they're struggling with, so that we can coach back to them and say, hey, remember, like, we want you to create an article, during the process, right after case closed, not past 10 days after the case is closed, but it is the coach that has this responsibility.
Okay. And so it's a combination, though, I imagine, after attach. So it's a combination of the coach and some automation showing.
Yeah, this dashboard, is completely automated. And so the coach can go to this dashboard and take a look at what's happening, real time. And then they'll look at the detailed data, and then they'll do the coach back. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So even incorrect attachment is automated? Where's that?
Yep. Yeah, it's automated in the fact that we have a set, like, for instance, we have 2 articles, one that says this is how you submit an enhancement request, and this is how we support customizations. Those 2 articles, like, we can give those to the customer as a process awareness, but I certainly don't want them to attach those articles because that didn't solve the issue, right? So those are examples where the model is specifically aware of articles that are kind of against the rules.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. And then there was a question earlier about self-service, your tipping point. When did you determine that you wanted to turn your self-service on? Was it already on prior to you?
It was. It was. We had just launched, prior to me joining, we had just launched an initiative to update our search experience on the portal. And, I have to say, from a focus area, my initial focus was actually on the internal team to actually start to get, good content created. And so really, from a focus area, from an external perspective, that's our focus for 2020. So the mobile app, virtual agents, and bringing customers back to the portal. And I have a slide that just shows, just with our 2 launches in April, what the impact was on our portal experience.
Okay, great. And then you mentioned it earlier, but someone was asking if you set targets for article publishing.
So as far as the number of articles created, we didn't set targets. Basically what we've done is monitored trends and make sure that if we just trained, 50 people, we would expect that, the number of TSCs creating articles would go up and the number of articles themselves, would increase. But we didn't set goals.
Great. Okay. And then another question, and we're getting quite a few questions, a lot of great questions. How do you deal with articles that have been flagged for review, and what's the workflow in publishing them?
Yeah, so let me just go to the next slide, just because it's going to talk a little bit about our content evolution.
Okay, great.
So our content evolution, and what I'm showing here, and this is actually a new dashboard that we've developed that helps us understand. So what you can see in this dashboard, we have close to 20,000 articles in our support and troubleshooting knowledge base, and we're creating about 1,000 articles a month. And so this program is actually doing well in the fact that we're creating a lot of content each month. And we're now at the point, now that we've trained everybody, we're now at the point that we need to really look at the health of our content. And that's what this dashboard's about. And basically what happens is, again, this is an automated system, right, that does a number of checks to establish what we call a KB score. And then based on that score, it highlights which articles we consider active, meaning people are engaged with this article, versus which articles are stale. So if we look at this bottom section on this particular dashboard, what we're showing is the individual article number, what the audience is, the category, who authored, when was it last updated. So this data is all based on when it was last updated. when it was initially published, what the score was, but you'll see some things that are important. So initially in our program, we were just looking at which articles were being reused by our internal team. And we were saying that's the important part. Now what we've done is expanded to say, okay, now let's look at how many people, both internal and external, are getting value out of this article. So we're showing in this first category the number of users that are attaching. So an article that has, let's say, 20 attaches but only one user is going to be ranked lower than an article that says has 20 attaches but it was 5 users that got value out of it. We're also showing like internal viewers, internal views, customer views, customer viewers. So how many different customers actually viewed this, how many customer views and guest views. So if you look at that last article that I'm showing here on the far right, this one had guest views of 1,628. Now, this is a case where we weren't paying attention to our unauthenticated views to understand that actually we don't want people to have to go through our portal. You know, if they can go to Google and they can find this article without ever interacting with our portal, that's actually what our goal is. So one of the things we did back in December is we hired a consultant to review our search engine optimization, and we made a significant amount of changes to make sure that our content, was viewed. So to the question that you asked, Armfin, basically somebody just has to click on the orange, let's say they started on, the greater than 24, and maybe they looked at just public articles just to clean up anything that's external. And then what shows on the lower part of the screen is each article, and they can just double click into that article, go into our ServiceNow instance, review that article, and either update it or retire it. And you can see in the middle section is what we're using, and we've just launched this next phase. We're using this to monitor our progress, like of the articles that needed to be reviewed, like how many actually were reviewed, how many actually were updated, and how many actually were retired.
Great. And then there was a question on how do you determine if it should be retired?
So basically and it's interesting, we've had a couple conversations of like, Lynda, why can't we just like automatically retire? Like if we know that this article hasn't been used by anybody, shouldn't we just remove it from the system? And of course, systematically, technology, we could do that. But our users have basically said, no, we're just new to this model. Like we're not prepared for you to auto retire content. And so it's basically using that KB score. And again, it's an algorithm that identifies, basically what is that lower, 10 to 20% of usage for each of the teams.
Okay, great. And then there was, and you might get to it on a future slide, but as far as the customer deflections, there's questions on how you calculate that.
Yeah, so customer deflections, and like I kind of hyperventilate anytime there's a question about deflections, as many of you probably do with your leadership. So in our world, a deflection, and before it even came to ServiceNow, this was already, kind of defined. A deflection was counted if the customer logged into the portal, they actually had to search from the portal, they had to view an article from the portal, at least one, and in that session, they had to not create a ticket. And so that's how we defined it. And basically the last article that the customer viewed was the one that got credit for the deflection. Quite honestly, that's a little bit random, but that's how it was defined. And our deflection rate, has been between 20 and 24% for 3 years that I've been here. Like it's not moved. And that's actually been a sore subject for our leadership team that says, Lynda, if we're doing this program right, like what's happening? Why is our deflection not moving? And in our case, the reason it's not moving is because we are only measuring such a small slice of the activity that we're not actually seeing the full picture. So in that definition, we would not have seen the 1,628 guest views because they didn't log in, they didn't use our search, and they didn't view from our portal. And so we weren't counting that in the bigger picture. So we're actually in the process of updating, what does self-service success look like here at ServiceNow.
Great. And then a question on this dashboard, who has access to this?
So basically, any of our, obviously directors, managers, our team leads, our coaches. So this is something that we're rolling out, basically, to everybody on the team that will be involved in our content evolution.
Great, thank you.
Anything else before I?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I wanted to just speak to like a feature that's coming, which again, for me, if this feature would have been available in the system when I first started, it would be amazing. But again, as you guys are working with your different technology partners, basically we've released a feature called the Knowledge Demand Insight Dashboard. And what it does is it basically looks at, all your cases or incidents, compares it to, first of all, it throws out any cases that have an article attached. And then it also looks to say, what is the topic of the case, and sees if we have any articles already on that topic. And if we do, it throws those out. And so what you're left with is just the cases that haven't had an article attached, don't really find an article in the system. And then it uses a machine learning algorithm to cluster based on the topic. And what I like about this dashboard is the fact that then you have a button that allows you to create a task for somebody to dig in and see, hey, do we need an article on this topic? So I wanted to, just bring, insights in the fact that this is something that would have been fabulous when I was first starting. But as the technology, is growing, all of you, that can put pressure on your vendors, to say, this is what I want. This actually really helps the knowledge manager.
Great. And then there was a follow-on question from your dashboard.
Yeah.
Are the metrics out of the box, or was this something that you customized, all the metrics you've been showing?
So these dashboards, the attached quality dashboard and this content evolution dashboard are dashboards that we've built in our Tableau big data environment. So where we're taking, data from a lot of different sources. We actually are working with our product managers. Basically kind of what happens with me is I develop the dashboards as far as what, is happening in the real life, and then they take it into product. So one of the things that, we'll see in the next version of our release is based on some of the dashboards I've been creating, you'll see us release those as standard dashboards.
Okay, great. And then the functionality that you just showed on Knowledge Gap, that's a future functionality, correct? That's not quite out yet?
No, it actually was released with our Orlando release here at ServiceNow.
Great.
Yep. So this one is actually released, and then one that we're releasing again. I'm excited about it. And again, for all of you that are working with your vendors, there's a dashboard. There's an element of our deflection dashboard that we're releasing that's called unsuccessful searches. And it actually is the same type of technology that helps us as knowledge managers to know which searches people didn't click on things, right? And helps us understand like what's happening from a search perspective.
Great, great.
So, and again, for us, and any of you that have been walking the path like I have, like search is the key, the key technology that you need in order to be successful. So here at ServiceNow, last October, I had the biggest week of my life in the fact that we got a new CEO. I got a new search engine, search technology, because we actually invested in Ativio. And Ativio, if you look at the Magic, the Gartner Magic Quadrant, they were up in the upper right-hand corner with Coveo as very strong unified index technology. And the third thing is I got funding to do the project I mentioned, to do my SEO in December. So yeah, that week of my life, I don't know I'll ever have another one like that. So we've talked about, the benefits. So I think I'm going to just run through this pretty quick. So we had an 87% increase in attach rate. Again, we've been very careful, although we've set a target, which makes me hyperventilate a little bit. each month and each quarter. And it basically was set by each individual team. So some teams were at 10%, some teams were at 40%, some teams were at 60%. And we basically wanted to just keep our eye on that number, not that everybody needed to be attaching, random things to meet the goal. So it was a little bit sensitive because we know we're not supposed to set goals, but we needed to, in our QBRs, we needed to make sure that we had something that brought visibility to the program, and we chose attach rate to be the one that helped us with the behavior. We've also seen, like we said, faster resolution, 50%, and then as I mentioned, we've created over 10,000 new articles in the past year. So we're creating between 800 to 1,000 new articles each month. So I wanted to show this just because this is, again, another one of those money slides that you can see what I'm showing on the upper right-hand side. I'm showing our external views from support and troubleshooting. And you can see we had, kind of mixed results. We were doing okay. They were, going up from, May, through the end of 2019. And then we took a drop, over the holidays, which happens. Increase a little bit in January, February, March, but you can see the huge spike, so 2.65%, or we actually almost tripled our volume in April. And the two projects that caused that were a project that we released for our unauthenticated portal. And we did basically a big relaunch of that page. And we had a whole lot of links that help for SEO, help customers find content faster. And then we also did a project called our Customer Success Center, which is actually a separate property here at ServiceNow, but it actually has links, deep links for content that is important for our admins that actually takes them to our portal. So we're super excited about the fact that, although deflections have been flat, the fact that we're seeing, huge increases in our external views. And again, you can't count every one of these as a deflection, but that people are getting value from your knowledge base when we're seeing this type of increase in views.
Great. And then there was a question on the attach.
Yeah.
Do you expect all cases to have attach? So if it's a customer specific or a very quick desk agent getting a ticket, what's the goaling that you've given? Not goaling, but what's the guidelines that you've given?
We absolutely don't expect 100% attach rate. And, in a previous program that I ran, we had a VP that liked the idea of 100% attach rate. And so because he wanted the goal to be 100%, then we had to create an article that says, attach this article when you don't need to attach an article. Right. And so, and so that you lose credibility so quickly, with your team when you have to put an article like that in the system, because it's not adding any value. It's just trying to make a number and make leadership be happy. And so in our world, for instance, we have monitoring cases, and in those monitoring cases, let's say we're monitoring a customer's environment and we're, assessing that there's, a performance issue potential, or there's something happening with a disk or some type of hardware failure. We do those monitoring, and then we actually attach a troubleshooting article with those cases on the way in. And those are auto attached. So we don't count those cases, in our overall attach. And so, right now we're at 58% attach rate. And I would imagine that we will, peak at, let's say 60 to 65%. And then again, we're going to start to, see those numbers change. Again, same with time to release. We've almost taken it to the point, the lowest point that we can. And if we're shifting the easy ones, out to the portal, our time to release is actually going to go up. So those are, obviously things you want to pay attention to, on your metrics.
Great. And then you break out known errors from support and troubleshooting. Are those in two different knowledge bases, or just different attributes of the articles?
Yeah, they're actually two different knowledge bases. And the reason for that is we, in our known error process, we have a problem record, a change record, and a known error record, which means the problem record is internal to ServiceNow. We attach, all the incidents or cases that happen, related to that issue. But if we can put a workaround in place for the known error, we want to be transparent with our users to know that this exists in the system. And if there's a workaround, we'll actually include that workaround in the known error, but it's actually, tightly coupled and attached with our problem record. And then, as we fix it, then, notifications go out to all those customers that reported those cases on that particular, that now we have either completed the patch or we possibly updated the workaround.
Okay, great.
Cool, so I'm gonna skip, this was just fun. Somebody on LinkedIn actually reached out to one of my team members, which I thought was amazing that they were looking for us. But they basically, on the right-hand side, they sent us an email that said they just wanted to thank the team, that facilitated the creation of these articles, right? Which again, you never really get that thank you, but the idea that we actually, are adding value, in our customers' programs because they're not having to contact support. So this was just made the team so excited. So again, these are the key pillars, which again, this is just really standard KCS, but making sure, that you are capturing at the time of solution proposed. Number 2 is using coaching to make sure that that behavior is permanent. Now, we've also found in our world that the coaches not only are working on KCS programs, every other change that we're releasing within the system, like taxonomy updates, tool updates, process updates, these same coaches are the ones that are now the change agents because now they have a reputation within their teams. They're a trusted, advisor. We actually run those changes through those coaches ahead of time so that if anything's going to cause noise, those coaches can tell us and we can, possibly adjust the way we're rolling it out or adjust our implementation. And so these coaches, although at the time, like I said, our CTO was like, what are we doing here, Lynda? Like, are we sure? We now know that these coaches have become, just like the key to any of the changes that we're rolling out, here at ServiceNow. And then the measurements. So I want to get to just quickly take a quick peek at a few of the dashboards. So are you guys seeing this dashboard right here?
Now, I still see your presentation.
Okay, let's give it a minute. Is it refreshed yet?
No, not yet.
All right, let me reshare again. Sometimes, Okay, how about that? Are you seeing the dashboard now?
It says it started. Yep, now we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So again, I'm just gonna, we just have, I know 5 minutes left and I wanted to, just plant, a few different seeds with you on things that you want to think about as you're measuring your program. So this is like my master dashboard that when I started the program, again, almost 3 years ago, like I said, I have to have a dashboard that shows me and leadership that we're moving in the right direction. And so what you can see is this first section that we're showing is how many TSEs are creating articles. And, we had a, spike of 339 in March. But this idea is the fact that this behavior is now a consistent behavior for over half of our team every month, which is fabulous. I'm also showing on this dashboard the number of TSCs attaching. And again, you can see from, last year we were at 445, out of 600 people, we're at like 572, right? So again, this attaching behavior, when I first started, like we had 10 people attaching, right? I mean, nobody was attaching. So this is one of the ways that we measure. Now, I showed you the direct outcome, picture as far as those, how many views. I'll just see, and this might be slow, so I apologize if it takes a little bit to load. But as it's loading, I wanted to just go through the different tabs that I keep track of on this dashboard. So I have a tab called Content Published so that I see month over month how many new articles are being created by each team. Then I have a content retired tab. So now I can see how much content is being retired in the system every month. I have a time to publish tab so that I can see, how is our time to publish changing over time. I can look at our approval backlog, so I can see if for some reason, even though we have instant publish, we can still have articles that someone created that haven't gotten published just because they've created a draft that they haven't moved to a published state. I show, for me, our top support and troubleshooting articles, both on deflections and views, our top KE articles, our drive new content, and then I have attached scorecard. So basically this is and I can slice and dice this by director roll-up. So I can pick an individual director or individual manager, which is actually really, really helpful. We'll see if this actually displays. It's working from home at times, the network, you're like, really? Like, how long?
And while we're waiting for this, we are getting questions. And this is tremendous as far as getting insights into measuring success, measuring adoption, et cetera. So really appreciate this. There are questions and I think you mentioned this earlier, that you've customized this, but you've given it to ServiceNow Product Management that they'll look to incorporate in future releases.
Yeah, we have a deflection dashboard that's coming out actually in our Paris release, so, that's scheduled for, GA, in the fall.
Right.
All right, so this one's taking a bit. So I'm going to skip to, just so you can get a sense of, this dashboard that we looked at. So if I wanted to, use this dashboard, I would pick, one of our teams, so it's showing all of our teams. Of course, it's going to take, anytime we're logged out for like 10 minutes, it actually refreshes. So we'll see if this refreshes quickly. All right. Maybe. You love live demos.
Sure.
All right. So let's say we're going to look at our service management. And basically now what it's going to do is just going to show my my team that manages service management articles, and you can see it's changed dramatically, right? So now we're showing 5,000 active articles, 1,000 articles to be reviewed. So it's showing this team has got a lot to do. How they might start with this though is they just would click on this orange for over 24, and basically now it's going to show them the articles at the bottom here of the ones that are considered stale in our environment, and then they can just double click on the KB article, go look at it, and make a change. So what's nice is they can also do it by KB category. So if they wanted to have 5 people on their team, like attack this, we could go by KB category and say, okay, this subject matter expert on this topic versus this topic. And so it just makes it super easy for them, to understand what the status is. So now they only have 211 articles to review that were in the over 24. And so now it's a more manageable number compared to that, 1,000 that they need to look at over time. And so I'll just do one quick demo. We'll see if this works. So on the, and of course it's going to refresh. So if we clicked into basically the exception, what I wanted to just show you is the detail that comes up on this dashboard. Again, more just for your, benefit, that helps the team, just look at the data really fast. So basically this is the case detail data. And, again, they can do the filter by an individual person or an individual team, but it shows them, what was the reason So a lot of these were article published, you know, after the case was closed or an article existed, but they didn't use it. So it's like, okay, if the case was created after the article was created and they didn't attach within 30 days of the case, like why? Meaning that they didn't probably search the knowledge base. And so this just allows them to quickly, again, click into the case, go into the detail, look at what happened, and then they can, you know, coach back, you know, to the TSE. Let me see if this one. So the last one that I wanted to show, which this one is basically our dashboard that helps us understand the value. So these are KCS success measures. So what you can see on this dashboard, again, on the right-hand side, we can filter, you know, by manager, we can filter by assignment group, we can filter by region and location. But this is where we're showing the cases with and without articles attached. And we're also showing the TTR with and without articles attached. And so this is the, you know, in our world, this is like, again, that money slide that I mentioned, is helping people have visibility to what value the program is bringing. Of course, it's refreshing. But I wanted, you know, you guys to kind of have a visual of the types of data that, you know, we're using to measure our program. And as Armfin knows, I could talk all day on this topic, but I know we're 2 minutes after, so like I'll just wrap up, you know, if there's any questions before we end the session.
Yeah, and I think it just a lot of comments on great work, and so really appreciate you coming on, Lynda, sharing your expertise, and particularly drilling down in the measurements on how you're measuring success, how you're measuring adoption, etc. And so really appreciate it. And then for those attendees, we will be editing this and getting the recording out to you. So you'll be getting that shortly. And then would recommend, again, the future KCS in action. While you're here, you can just register for those upcoming ones. Again, we really appreciate practitioners with expertise such as Lynda sharing their lessons learned, best practices, etc. So very valuable. And again, thank you so much, Lynda.
Great. Nice to virtually meet everybody.
Okay. All right. Have a good day, everybody.